Boom! Even better. First review of the night. Debated is over. Invictus Gaming versus Team Liquid Game 1. Still light mode. I know that that makes people sad, but we're keeping it in the light. But before we get into the actual gameplay, yeah, MSI was a really interesting tournament. I think a lot of people have had polarizing kind of takeaways from this tournament. I think in general people enjoyed it just because the regional banter was strong. The final was obviously very notable, being NA versus EU final. The games were kind of easy on the eye because they were shorter. But I know like there's a lot of different, like if you ask 10 different people about what they thought about MSI, I think you might get 10 different answers based on just different parameters. Like, oh, I loved it. It was like thrill a minute. Or I thought the games were really high level. I thought the games were really low level. It was a really interesting tournament in a lot of different ways. I'm excited to know what the legacy of the actual gameplay at MSI 2019 will be in the future, rather than the legacy of the results, which is that, you know, Worlds is the most hyped ever with how many competitive regions there are at the moment. So very interesting tournament to think about. But just looking over at Games of Legends, looking at kind of things, biggest takeaway for me is average game time. You know, it's never quite this short, right? 30 minutes, 44 is insanely short average game time for a tournament of 42 games length. Like, this is a fast tournament. Final was over in, you know, almost no time at all. Just a lot of, compared to previous metas we've all lived through with average durations of 45 and 50-minute games, like, it's insane how quick some of the games are. Average kills per game. I mean, look at this. I mean, do this together, right? And it tells you that the stat that I was talking about a lot before MSI, you know, the combined champion kills per minute, like we're looking at 0.92 or so. 0.92 champion kills per minute. These were bloody games. Like, there were a lot of kills going on in these games. The one with the most, Jesus. 34 minutes, 50 kills. Let's do the math there. 6.8. 6.8. 13.6. You know, this is like 1.65 or so champion kills per minute or something like that. My math's probably pretty off there. There's a lot of action in these games, which I think was cool to watch. But it was the tournament where the difference between first and sixth in the group stages was so little. Like, there was so, like, PvB could snipe a game off pretty much. Like, PvB versus IG was never felt lopsided to IG in the way that previous dominant teams have kind of had that control over. And I feel like that wasn't as true with SKT in the second round. Like, I think SKT really did kind of have a stranglehold on the teams below them, outside of G2. But when IG is the leader and IG plays their very flashy, aggressive style, it opens up a lot of really competitive results. Like, it opens up a lot of pretty insane games that come through. So that's kind of the advantage of having a non-kind of control Korean team as the dominant team in group stages, is that they do have areas that you can target and take advantage of, as TL is going to show in this series. So speaking of them, Invictus Gaming, you look at their stats and, you know, this is definitely the reading of a dominant team. Remember, these stats are including their 3 losses to Team Liquid in the best of 3, and still all positive stats, still a pretty insane GD at 15 stat, 1378 positive, which is very, very impressive. For context, TL, negative 1316. So we're talking about, you know, complete turnaround. 2 ends of the coin here, and that's, again, including both sides' good and bad results. But you just see a lot of very trademark stats of Invictus Gaming when you look through them. Like, their damage per minute is huge. You know, they're a very carry-oriented team they don't play tanks, that don't do a lot of DPM, compared to Team Liquid, who pretty much had to use similar tools to everyone else. But kills per game, 18 to 11. Again, very relevant. Deaths per game, 15.9 to 14. So more kills, more deaths, more kill-death ratio. Invictus Gaming just give you more than Team Liquid in a lot of ways, and yet they were very much second best in this particular series. Amusing stat was that Team Liquid finished second at MSI, right? That's, to be fair, that's 100% confirmed. If you don't include play-ins, like if you look over the overall result of Team Liquid in this tournament, you know, like it's very rare that you'll have a negative overall record, but like that's just what happened, right? Like if you don't include the final, they came in 7-7 when it came to the final, which like a 50% win rate team in the final is such a weird thing to think about. But you know, they ended 7-10. But IG, the Shy was probably the biggest disappointment of the tournament, I think, for many people. Like he was number one on the ESPN most hyped players. You know, we had the analyst desk segment spot where we all said he was the number one player to look at coming into this tournament. He definitely wasn't able to perform at the level we expected. One of my biggest surprises was champion pool wise, like there's no surprises from these champs. Like, okay, Nara coming back was not probably the most standard thing, but the real thing with the Shy was like not a lot of fighters here. And by fighters, I mean Camille, Fiora, Riven, you know, these 4-1 champions that can take over the game. Like if you look at champions here that are played 4-1, so I'm not talking about 1-3-1 champs. Yes, you can play Camille, Fiora in a 1-3-1, but usually 1-3-1 champs have something that can spread into a team fight. Like a Kennen, for example, is very often 1-3-1, not 4-1. Like a lot of those, right? But the closest is like AD Nico, which I think he played, what, one game of? I know there was AP Nico thrown in there. Victor, I guess, is kind of a 4-1 champ, but after all the nerfs to his base stats and his tank items, I don't feel like Victor reaches raid boss territory in the side lane anymore to be a 4-1 champion. Like the closest is probably Akali, but you end up spreading your lead on Akali a lot more. Like it's one of those things where we didn't see any of those champions, and like there's people in the chat, for example, saying like they're too weak in lane to run, and I think some of that is true. Obviously, Fiora early matchups outside of Aatrox can be pretty tricky, and against range matchups, it can be hard to pull off. But given how Ning was often in the Shy's backpack in previous, you know, metas, I would have thought they would have tried it, especially against slower teams. Like against someone like Team Liquid, who only team fights, why not have, you know, some 4-1 insurance where the Shy just wins the game for you in a side lane? And they just never took that tact. Against some teams, I understand. Right? Against G2, maybe you don't do that, right? But I think against some teams, you do take that risk. And I was very surprised to see no Fiora or Camille, you know, outside of, I guess, play-ins. I was quite surprised in that way. So the Shy definitely, you know, wasn't able to perform at the level we expected him to. This tournament had a lot of Ning moments. You know, there's this one that I'm trying to forget. The Kane. We were all in the caster room when the Kane game was happening, and we were all calling it. Like we called it from very early in the draft. Like, this is going to be the Kane game. And the longer it went on, the more obvious it was going to be a Kane game. So it was good to see that. And you know, people will remember Ning as a Turbo Winter, but like he had a fantastic first few days before he kind of fell away in form as the tournament went on. This, of course, was the man who was the hardest done by. I thought Rookie had a really strong tournament. Especially, he was the kind of cool head. It did feel like IG kind of reverted a few steps after kind of becoming a full squad team in their victories in the first round robin, especially at Worlds last year. It did feel like Rookie was trying to hold down the fort really hard for his team this tournament. And then Jackie Love and Baolan, like I think Baolan definitely had a down performance, but I think his like international reputation and his domestic reputation were very mismatched after having a career performance at Worlds last year, even more so than Ning. Like Ning had many superstar games in the LPL before he came out to Worlds and like really kind of took his reputation to the next level. But I think Baolan had been a lot more serviceable outside of his Rakan pop-offs. and then was taken to the same level because, again, they're world champions. And Jackie Love was Jackie Love. I don't think anyone was surprised, positive or negative, about Jackie Love this tournament. And then TL, who, were kind of looking like the inferior SKT for basically the entire tournament till we got to the semifinals, and then just had a really good read on IG that we'll get into as we get into game number 1 here of the series. I think TL came in, and for the longest time it was, well, this team isn't performing, but Impact is having a great tournament. So shout out to Impact. I did a segment on him on the broadcast. Like, he definitely brought his A game, and not in the way we expected, right? He came in and didn't play any team fight tanks. He played the meta champions outside of being kind of the last bastion of the gangplank. And apart from a couple of like kind of questionable moments, like the Shy, for example, dominates him in this game we're going to get into. Like, this was like the game 1 of this series was the only one where you really felt a top difference when Impact was in the game. The stat that I was able to pull from him that I was so proud of, but the stats people was so, it was like a wrestle, because I came away from, they were like, okay, make an Impact segment, and I was like, all right, but his stats were not going to be something you could be like, look at how great Impact is doing. Like, you can show highlight reels, and that's something, but I want to give the fans something to digest that's not just like, no, trust me, also look at these flashy lights, Impact's so good, because you want to show stats and be like, wow, he's number 1 and everything, but that's not what Impact was doing this tournament. The theory was Impact's going to come in and get schooled by Wonder, by Khan, by Zeros, by the Shy, and that didn't happen. Like, the eye test tells you that. He passes the eye test. He was very competitive against these mid laners. So already, like, I can tell you that, and 90% of people, but yes, I watched those games. I agree. But I want to give something to people that they can kind of take away, or something that you can present to someone who didn't watch it as more than just, trust me, I'm Papa. Like, you want to give people more than that, if possible. And the stat I came up with, I was looking at his games and rewatching, and the stat I kind of, the takeaway I had, and the stat I looked for was, I was like, okay, he's keeping top laners who have better micro mechanics, which, I inverted commas it because it means something and nothing. Honest, like, he's not getting blown out by top laners we thought who would blow him out. He's actually winning in certain matchups that we thought he would be heavily struggling on. The eye test says he's doing way better than you might have thought. There's probably a stat that corroborates this. And the stat I found was that the average gold lead that these top lane carries had, these strong top laners had the tournament against everyone else, was 200 gold lower than their average matches against Impact. Basically, Impact was keeping them honest. Like, they were growing leads against other top lane carries, but they could never grow a lead against Impact. In fact, they were like 250 to 300 gold poorer against Impact, even though Impact was playing 4 Gangplank games where, he's not going Klepto, so he's not growing gold leads in the first 15 minutes. We're looking at the first 15 minutes of the game. He's kind of steely, being the shield, staying competitive, playing the meta champions, and not looking out of place doing it. So that's the stat I came up with. I'm not going to say put that on his resume, but it kind of connected to what I was seeing, is that against everybody else, they were making way more gold than they were against Impact, which suggests that Impact was doing something good. Now, does that mean that he won't just like revert to a pumpkin back in LCS and just kind of have not the level of performance we saw at MSI? Very possible, but I think Impact had a really strong tournament. And then from there, like, the problems for TL were very clear coming into this. The reason why this wasn't thought to be competitive is that Jensen had, a couple of good Akali games at the start and then kind of fell away in terms of individual play. Seemed to have almost no synergy with his jungler, and Smithy was, projected to be many, many tier lists below what we saw from Ning this tournament. And Doublelift and Core JJ were being reliable, but there were so many games where TL would just draft a duo lane earlier, like a safe one, a Tahm Kench lane, and then the Tahm Kenches were getting punished this tournament. Like, Tahm Kench, this was supposed to be the last hurrah of Tahm Kench. Don't forget that LCK Summer Will we see any support Tahm Kench with the grounding and self-slow on the Devour? Like, he's much more of a top laner now than he is a support. So this was supposed to be the tournament that infuriated you the most about Tahm Kench, but it was going to be caveated back. Oh, never mind. He's going to be, he's going to be gone. Like, it's one of those tournaments where you have empty rage because you know that it's because it's been played on a previous patch. But Tahm Kench Varus, the predicted blind pick 2v2 that has priority in every lane, lost almost every time it hit the rift at a really slow, really short, really low win rate. So it really didn't come to be. I thought Tahm Kench was very overexposed this tournament. Do we actually have a win rate on Tahm Kench overall? Let's find out. Where was Tahm in the end? 35%. That's a low Tahm Kench win rate, for sure. 35.71% was the Tahm Kench win rate. Tahm Kench was exposed this tournament, which was kind of heartening to see because it's a champion that has dominated play for oh so long. But let's get into it. Team Liquid versus Invictus Gaming, game number 1. Now, I was unfortunately greeted by a very unfortunate pop-up that lets me know that the YouTube slow down, accelerate app that I was using on Firefox is not working anymore. So let's play around with a couple of things. Let's make it 1080p because I'm not sure why it's 720p. I'm going to have to change playback speed manually, unfortunately. Not ideal, but let us move to 1.5 times speed. Yes, I do use Chrome, but for streaming reasons, I have to use Firefox. All right, let's make good old Cap and Flowers a little bit quieter when we get into game number 1. Invictus Gaming versus Team Liquid. And there was actually a really good Twitter post by the TL analyst that talked about their win conditions here. When I conceptualized this series, coming into it, to me, I thought about it, and I'm like, at this tournament, in this meta, the most important thing is mid-jungle. Like, this was a mid-jungle tournament because it felt like bot lane couldn't manufacture any solo leads, unless you were just going to win anyway. And top lane was kind of 2 range champions. I'm thinking like Kennen versus Nico would be like my tournament top lane matchup that were just kind of farming and waiting for team fights. We didn't see 4-1 champs dominate in this tournament, so we already mentioned the fighters like Fiora and Riven weren't there. The bot lanes in general that we thought would dominate were just farming it out, and I think bot lane was pretty irrelevant this tournament. So mid-jungle were kind of the most important roles by far. But then your task was, you need to be a better mid-jungle duo than Ning and Rookie to win this tournament, Team Liquid. Which people would have laughed you out of the room. Kind of understandably so, because there had been so little synergy between the two. But the analyst for Team Liquid, kind of infamous after his chatter about tier lists and things, talked about how the number 1 goal for this team was to win the 2v2. And with nameplates on, you're like, okay, how's that going to work? But TL actually kind of made it nameplates off and played very impressively around mid-jungle. And I think Ning and Rookie Ning especially fell into bad habits that the sum of the parts, like the sum of the potential of Ning and Rookie was never really realized in this series, especially not in the first 2 games, which were already... like they made the series so difficult for IG to come back in. So we'll get to the pick ban here between TL and IG. Gonna have to change my keyboard controls quite a bit. So sorry for all the clicking and stuff today. Things will be different next week. We'll have Pro View, but for today at least, we're gonna work with what we have. So in terms of bans here, the Taric makes sense. TL is a team that's shown they're willing to pick Sonataric, but it's a surprise because, we saw IG blow open Sonataric and then never actually ban it in kind of a multiple future series. So I think it's just a case that IG thought that SKT would never play Sonataric, because Sonataric was never played in Korea. No Korean team had played Sonataric until it was actually seen played by SKT, obviously in very poor fashion during the group stage. And I think IG was just being like, we don't need to waste a Sonar or Taric ban against SKT. They're never going to play that. And then they saw it and slammed it. And yet the overall tact seems to be from IG, if you go watch future series, if they suspect that a team can play Sonataric, they ban it. So it's kind of a weird duality where they were so explosive, like historically explosive at beating a strategy, and yet overall don't want to leave that strategy open. It's kind of a weird duality to consider, but that's just how IG approached this. The Galio ban makes sense. CoreJJ had a lot of heroic performances on that pick. And Galio Lucian, like a duo lane that we actually saw SKT moving towards the end of the group stage, and just more bot lane aggression. Like, the way you expect Team Liquid to play is that they put the tools and the counter picks and the advantages into bot lane, and then Smithy camps the lane. That's how you assume Team Liquid's going to play, because if you watch them domestically, and I've reviewed a lot of Team Liquid games, it's bot lane focus, often at the cost of top lane. Like, Impact will pick Vladimir or a top lane carry that needs jungle attention, and yet everything will go into Doublelift and CoreJJ winning lane, because that's just how the team is wired. And you kind of understand the tact IG takes, but the fact that TL can subvert that this series is one of the big reasons that this actually ends up being a Team Liquid victory. Bans on the side of TL, obviously a lot more standard. Baolan is historically dominant on Rakan, and they ban away 2 flex picks. Jace is the only one that can't be left open. That was actually one of the things that teams understood as the tournament went on. I'm not sure if we got it across on broadcast. I tried to mention it a couple of times, but Jace actually ended up being the most relevant flex pick. And that was a surprise to me based on pre-tournament expectations. Because I sat there and I was like, Jace is actually the most containable of the big five. Big five, Aurelia, Jace, Silas, Ryze, Akali. Those were the big 5 flex picks. And Jace is the most containable to me. There's a lot of champions that can beat Jace in top, or at least can set up win conditions against Jace. I don't mean in the 1v1. In the 1v1, yes, Jace has priority on most any champion, but there's a lot of things you can do against Jace that don't work against the other meta top laners. So Gragas top from Khan, for example, was a historic counter pick to Jace that actually works pretty well. You can pick a ganking jungler and gank the lane a lot. You can play Ornn and get enough armor to be able to shrug off the damage. You can go Pyke and play through a Pyke comp. There's a lot of stuff that situationally works against Jace. But there's something special about Jace that made him the most valuable top laner, or the most valuable flex pick, and it's actually nailed by Tulkas Arome in chat. Jace is AD though, and it's even more than that. Jace is a ranged AD top that fits into the big 5, and the AD factor proved to be so important. And if you're wondering why, teams were getting into scenarios with the viable jungler pool and top lane pool where triple AP top lane was becoming more and more commonplace. Think of like Silas, Sejuani, Akali kind of comps. Like, that's not a surprise that those champions are paired together with where the power levels of the meta picks were. And it wasn't enough just to have a ranged AD champ, because so many games were decided before ADs hit 3 items. Bot lane AD carry importance was, as we mentioned, very downplayed this tournament. So having a physical damage solo laner or jungler was actually a kind of god tier. So the Jace was god tier because of the fact that he was AD. And then the jungle pool, Rek'Sai, Jarvan were kind of the AD junglers, and then Lee Sin for the Lee Sin players. So given how much was dumped into jungler and flex pick bans, getting an AD champ that was relevant and made sense in matchups that you could blind pick early in the draft became the god tier. And that's why Jace was really propelled up this tournament, even though he had kind of substantial nerfs before the tournament started. And then Prince Jarvan, again, AD jungler. It makes a lot of sense for that to jump up. But after the first round here, you're not super concerned at all if you're IG. The Sylas is something that Impact and Jensen both could play, but Jensen was losing both sides of the Akali and Sylas matchup. And again, Impact is a Sylas picker, but not necessarily someone you expect to run away with the game at all. So the Jarvan is the only thing where you're like, oh, that's a champion that can do a lot. And there are some teams you never want to give Jarvan, like Clid, for example, and SK Telecom T1. But because xSmithy had been so far behind the 8-ball, you're like, okay, it's the champion that can have creative jungle paths and is AD and does help their draft, but it's the player who can't perform or hasn't shown proficiency on early game aggression and priority. So I think overall, with the mindset of it's before this match has happened, because it's right now easy to sit there and say, but xSmithy was great and xSmithy domestically, but none of that was relevant when this first pick and ban was happening, because it hadn't happened at this tournament. xSmithy had been pretty woeful outside the final game against G2, and that's just a single game, among 13 that he'd played. So Zyra Khan off the board. Jaculov defaults to Kai'Sa in these spots a lot, so I actually don't remember the exact bot lane from IG this series. We remember this, though. So Ning goes Lee Sin, and Ning is definitely a Lee Sin player. He's not the S+ tier Lee Sin player, I think, in the LPL. I think of Ning's classic champions, Gragas is a really big one for him. He was one of the best Gragas players in 2016, 2017 days when Gragas was one of the big picks. We know about his Kayn. Had some great aggressive champions. But the Lee Sin is something where like Flawless and Clid were always better Lee Sin players than Ning. So while he's not the toppest tier of Lee Sin player, he's still a pretty good Lee Sin player. But what's a clear takeaway here is that like Lee Sin can do things into Jarvan. But if you're not one of those players who can really get a lot done on Lee Sin, and he did have the great game where he pulled off the mid lane gank smiting the minion, but Lee Sin's fallback patterns against Jarvan actually put him in a really awkward spot when you think of the jungle matchup here, because if Lee Sin gets the early ganks off, then hits 6 and can use that warrior enchant lead, he's a monster, right? He scales very well throughout the game, even though he has a more protective role with his kick in the late game outside of engage. But if Jarvan gets early ganks off and gets the race to 6 and first item, like Lee Sin so often shows up second to a lane and then can't impact it because Jarvan's already been involved in a double kill. So if Jarvan gets a hot start, I think Lee Sin struggles. If Lee Sin can, pull off a cheese gank and kill the Jarvan, like Lee Sin can get ahead of Jarvan, but I think more often than not, if Jarvan starts strong, he ends strong. So it's a matchup when Ning is not going to be on the front foot unless he can kind of reinvent the wheel and pull off a really important early gank here. There were a lot of other options open. Like Rek'Sai would have fit in with the Ryze pick just fine. It's hard to say how much what their pre-match expectation was in pick and match. I imagine they were just going for champion strength rather than overall comp from the start of the game. So if it's a pick comp, then obviously Rek'Sai makes a lot of sense in this case, and you already know it's against the Jarvan. And Rek'Sai Jarvan was, of course, considered to be the go-to jungle matchup. But I think Ning was just feeling full of confidence. And Lee Sin can do a lot of things that Rek'Sai can't. So I can't fault the pick. It's not a wrong pick by any means. But, if we were reviewing Game 2, we'd have different things to say. And the Kai'Sa, again, Jackie Love, if Lucian is gone, which is kind of my go-to pick for him, then Lucian is gone, Xayah is soft gone because of the Rakan ban. It was always going to be Kai'Sa, I think, in this spot from them here. And it's been something that other 80 carries like Big Koro and Double Lift were falling back to a lot in this tournament. The Ezreal priority was definitely down for a lot of teams. Braum taken, super standard. So let's, again, take time to think about what TL's game plan was. Because the thing that we didn't expect could happen this series was win the mid jungle. Mid jungle opens up bot lane, opens up top lane. If you win mid jungle, you spread it to mid. If you win mid jungle, you spread it to top, you spread it to bot, and then that's the icing on the cake. But mid jungle was the core win condition here. We should still kind of continue to track what the mid jungle is going to be in this series, how that's all going to interact with the side lanes here. Remember that the biggest thing we're coming away with was how impressed we were with TL's preparation. So seeing that up close and personal is what we're really focusing on, both in the pick ban and obviously when the game starts. So with the 80 carry pool taken this far down, I think Sivir was... It made some sense in this draft. So Varus and Ashe are banned. So when you're thinking of 80 carries available here, Doublelift showed no interest in going to Kalista. And Kalista when you've already blind picked support is pretty risky to go. So I think the Kalista drop away here is fine. A lot of teams choose Ezreal in this scenario, but Doublelift wasn't on an Ezreal kick by any means. The Sivir made some sense, but it's a champion that's very likely to put TL into a wave clearing fallback pattern. So while the Sivir here definitely, didn't take anyone by surprise, I was actually a little bit concerned about where the draft was going when the Sivir was locked in. And the Sivir was also blind taken with, we already mentioned the support's not taken. Alistair's considered a champion that locks out a Sivir pick because Headbutt Pulverize doesn't actually save you. The spell shield doesn't save you from Headbutt Pulverize. So this is where it feels like IG have kind of dropped bait and that Doublelift has taken it hook, line, and sinker. And now you go back and you say, are there other 80 carries that would have fit the spot where Doublelift takes Sivir? Chat, for example, is mentioning Draven. I think Draven with blind, so again, with no idea of the support matchup, you can still get pretty counterpicked if you take Draven here, and it's not really a Doublelift pick very often, right? So again, another team would consider Draven here. I think it's actually a pretty risky spot for Draven. He's not a Kalista player. Again, because they went first round Braum, it gets a little bit confusing as to where... I think Xayah is the safest choice because Xayah does a bit of everything. And the enemy team has a pick comp. So I think Xayah might have actually been the best choice here. Because Xayah doesn't really have anything that really undoes her. Because the enemy team is Kai'Sa, Ryze, Lee Sin. So if you think about what just those three picks do, because you don't have information on the last two, those three champions often fall into 1-3-1. They pick one person very, very well. Often you want the AD carry to be that person picked. The Kai'Sa combines really well with Ryze on a side lane because you can swoop in, not even with the Realm Warp, but just with the Killer Instinct and get picks in the side lane and then say TP up for a Baron or something like that. So already you're like, all right, enemy pick comp. What can I do to wave clear and to be a little bit safe? And so the Sivir is definitely not the strongest on the safety side, but is one of the strongest on the wave clear side. So I think Xayah probably would have been the best possible pick here. Xayah Braum's... It's a bit of a hodgepodge lane. It's not quite as bad as Ashe Braum. I think Ashe Braum is just... Caitlyn Braum is maybe worse, but there's some Braum lanes that, just don't have a lot of inherent synergy, and I think Ashe Braum is up there. But yeah, I mean, Ashe is the other... Ashe was banned, right? Ashe and Varus are banned. I think those were the two obvious ones to go to. I think Vayne is too risky to take into a pick comp. Some people have been mentioning that one. So I think I would have gone Xayah, but Sivir is fine in this scenario, except for the fact that Alistar is open. So this is where I think IG actually get a big draft win. Alistar into Sivir is that big of a win. Like, talk to any professional AD carry. I've talked to Reckless about it. I've talked to other ADs about it. They're all so scared about a scenario like that. And then they lock in Syndra here, which is always rookies. I'm going to blind pick this and win any matchup champion. Rookie is uniquely amazing on the Syndra. So I looked at this draft from IG and I say, okay, there's a lot to like about it. Like, IG have a lot of strong tools to go in here. And then the counter pick is given for impact. And you're like, okay, so That's a pretty heavy investment in impact when usually all your resources are used for bot lane. It's a losing 2v2 bot lane. It's a losing priority mid lane. The only win here is top lane, and it's a skill matchup against the Shy. So I actually thought that, the Jarvan versus Lee Sin is the one part where you're like, okay, I like this champion early. But kind of everything else shapes up really well for IG in this series. Like, I think IG actually had a strong draft, as the former BBQ Oliver's coach seems pretty happy about it all. 2 Korean coaches, Kane, of course, on the right. Like, if you pause at this point, I'm pretty scared for Team Liquid. We have the benefit of hindsight to know that things go well for Team Liquid this series, but you look at IG and they have a lot of ability to play side lanes depending on how the Shy goes. On hit Nico versus Rise, we've seen happen multiple times in Korea. Cuvée brought in the on-hit Nico straight fresh off the change and dominated with it against the Rise matchup, and it kind of reminded you of Nara versus Rise, as Nara was always seen as a good matchup until Genji got demolished by full penetration stacking Noguri Damwon Gaming. That's the time where we saw what seemed like it was going to be a free matchup for Nico get subverted because Noguri just kept stacking damage and just slammed Cuvé's Nico. Like, it was disgustingly one-sided. Definitely go back and watch that second round robin game between Damwon and Genji if you want to see confirmation. That was Comet Rise, though. So we saw Aftershock Rise, which was get demolished by Anar, and then we saw Comet Rise. Sorry, we saw Aftershock Rise get demolished by an on-hit Nico, and then we saw Comet Rise demolish a on-hit Nico, and now we get Phase Rush versus on-hit Nico, which, Phase Rush is kind of useful to disengage, I guess, some of the future W procs, but it's not. It's not a offensive tool by trade. It can be used offensively. Movement speed is obviously aggressive and defensive stat, but this is not the Comet, which was taken so that when you take W trades against either Mininar or in this case Nico, you actually get some decent burst trades in, and you're not just always at a health bar disadvantage, so that if you see a moment for a flash all in, or if your jungler's coming, then you have kill pressure as the Rise. But with the Phase Rush, it was kind of up in the air here, and you would mostly think it was going to be pretty Nico favored because it's less offensive options. Didn't prove to be that way, but that was kind of the saving grace of the draft here, is that there were good options for impact in the top side, but that didn't even prove to be the way. So for so much of this game, it looked like it was just going to be a pretty comfortable IG victory. Like, I think IG had a really good draft here. But let's always try to keep in mind, what is the win condition from TL they described? Mid-jungle synergy and mid-jungle priority. That's also the thing that we believe is the kind of only win condition. It feels like if you win mid-jungle, you always win in the current meta that was present at MSI. Gives you scuttle control. We're still, of course, on the early scuttle spawn compared to live servers. Not something we'll have to talk about when we kick off the summer season very shortly. Very standard jungle path from many junglers, but definitely Smithy. Bot side scuttle. You kind of have to go the path you see from Smithy here, which is red buff into bot side scuttle, because if you're going to have Sivir Braum as your bot lane duo and it's Sivir into Alistar, you can't also lose bot side control. You can't also lose bot side scuttle and allow Ning to set up some wards or control ward to stick, because then Sivir can actually never do anything in this lane. So you actually have to show bot side, otherwise double lift's just ruined. And again, we've talked about how Smithy plays around bot lane normally, so this plays into the natural tendency, but it's kind of doubled down here. You have to take bot side scuttle, otherwise you just have nothing doing in the bot side. So that's why Smithy's path of red buff into scuttle, then working his way through the jungle makes a lot of sense. It means that Impact has to play back, because Not going to have any priority on the top side. Syndra pushes in Silas. Ning can kind of do whatever he wants, which is a very scary way to play the game. I'm pressing my old buttons, but they don't work. Let's talk about this. So, when it comes to being spotted, do they ever know it? So Jarvan is hanging around top side. Doesn't necessarily tell you anything. This path is one that if you prep for Team Liquid, you would see happen every time. Red buff into Scuttle. So, again, that shouldn't be a surprise. The gank timing, you know, he takes blue, so it's a 3-camp clear. If you're looking at the timing of this, it definitely is the time when Jarvan's first going to be looking for a gank. You know he started Machete, so he's not going to be interested in doing Raptors or Krugs, and Jarvan's never been a jungler to do that. So many junglers on red side start red buff and full clear top side because they have a champion that's capable of killing Krugs fast, and then hit the level 3, and then they might contest a Scuttle, or they then might be ganking. But Jarvan is always going to be respected to be able to do an earlier gank, like this, just the nature of Jarvan. And yet, Rookie's kind of in a super awkward spot here. So when was Ning spotted? Was he spotted at all? Let's find out. He's hanging the side, so he's not spotted by the ward. I believe Scuttle dying might have been spotted. Doesn't really matter. But this is not Syndra playing towards her jungler. And it's not Syndra playing towards the expected path, or at least the research path of where you think a Jarvan should be. So, like, Rookie is not one minion push away from this lane. Like, if this gank happens, and there is no red minions there, or like the last red minion had just died, and then Rookie is backing off, then you're like, oh, unlucky. Like, you shouldn't have, you know, if you had killed that one, say, 2 more autos, and you would have been safe and close to your turret. But because this minion wave, including a cannon minion that needs like 2 Qs to die, like this minion wave will take another, what, 5 to 7 seconds to shove, unless you're using like your Scatter the Weak to like snipe away a low health minion. Like this is actually a very severe overextension, because you look at the minimap, Ning is nowhere near. Like Ning will take 6 seconds to get to mid lane, and he's a level 2 Lee Sin. He's not playing to where his jungler is, because jungler's not on Scuttle. If his jungler's like killing the Scuttle at this point, it's probably fine. But Rookie's quite brazenly overextended given the jungle matchup, and his flash is down. And Syndra with flash up is Rookie's bread and butter. It's super easy to have a lot of lane priority and take over games. But Syndra without flash up cannot walk up and harass the enemy under turret. Like the Yasuo-Syndra matchup that we see Syndra played by Rookie won so much is completely dependent on whether your flash is up or down. If your flash is up, you get in there and you hit every single auto. You're harassing around and forcing out very early win walls, and it doesn't matter that your ult gets blocked by win wall. You just get the kill anyway from health bar advantage. But then if your flash is down, then Yasuo with any jungler has huge ability to all in you. So someone in chat asking, should J4 save EQ? We can watch the replay here. Remember, J4 doesn't know how close Lee Sin is. If J4 is here, let's watch the replay. I'll give you the answer to this question. If J4 is here and knows where Lee Sin is, you don't EQ. You walk up, auto attack, wait for her to flash, and then you EQ kill her. However, with no knowledge of where Lee Sin is at present or how close he is to a counter gank, Rookie's walking up towards the river as if Lee Sin is there for a W. So in this point, you do EQ when PapaSmithy does, because then you will get a summoner for sure. So the next level here is to EQ. The solo queue next level is to walk up and auto attack, because you don't even think about the enemy jungler. But the competitive play next level is actually to EQ there, to answer your question. We have to always remember that they only have last pinged location or last warded location. They don't have the map hacks that we have, but it's a good thing to ask, because I think people in solo queue EQ Innis Jarvan way more than they should. There was a pause here. I forget what this pause was about. I was on the analyst desk, no doubt frustrated about pauses. And we're back already. Let's get back into it, baby. So suddenly, Rookie doesn't have the auto priority in mid lane that we assumed. So that kind of changes away some of our pre-match expectations where we were worried about the draft, thinking that, okay, Impact should have some options top side, but mid lane, bot lane, both in a really good spot for IG. And it should also be said that the earlier gank, Rookie and Ning had been so smart. There was a great quote, I think it was from Peter Dunn, tweeted about how like Ning was coming mid lane for ganks, subverting things like Rise back timings for tier. Like 3-minute gank timings, around 3 to 4 minutes, were the bread and butter for Ning to come mid lane and get Rookie a huge lead, like blow the enemy teleport before they have their tier done on Rise, take advantage of expected back timings. And Ning's fact that he would stay out on the Rift till around 4 to 5 minutes, while enemy junglers would be backing earlier for, say, a Tracker's Knife and a Control Ward. One of the reasons why Ning and Rookie were able to open up huge mid-jungle advantages. So just the fact that Smithy got an advantage mid lane, and now Rookie's way behind with his flash down, and Ning hasn't been able to hit the Rift, already it felt like something was a bit different this series. We couldn't have known how far it would go from here, but it's important to share with everyone right now that already 3 minutes in, this game's actually been way different than kind of the wham bam thank you ma'am kind of game we thought this one was going to go. Like, this was supposed to be super straightforward series for IG. Like, this was supposed to be a really easy victory for them, and it wasn't that. Like, it just wasn't that at all. At the top lane, we're just farming, you know. Just the farm fest everywhere else. Really nice ward here. Let's talk about this ward. So it's pre 5 minutes, and again, Ning has been known not to actually come in and make something happen, not to actually go back and shop super early. Like, Ning has been known to stay out on the Rift and almost always try to tip a lane pre 5 minutes. CoreJJ puts down a lane ward when Baolan and Jackie Love are playing in the minion wave. And against any other team, this is actually probably a wasted ward at 4 minutes because it doesn't patrol the river. But Ning has been known to lane gank quite consistently and been known to gank pre 5 minutes. It's actually a super next level ward here. This is actually a really cool ward to put down from CoreJJ, because suddenly Ning can't actually enter this lane unless Baolan goes super hard all in. But that means that Baolan can't flash Pove and then headbutt back to Ning. That's the play you want to make here, is flash Pove. The moment you see headbutt, it gets a lot more predictable for double lift. And now Ning is sitting in a ward while Smithy is trying to make things happen. So credit to the TL analysts. They did a lot of really good work here. A lot of good work here to kind of anticipate what IG were going to be. And IG had spent their recent games kind of trolling, right? Like, IG lost to SKT. That was just SKT playing better. They played their happy, fun games. They looked pretty unconvincing in a lot of their second round robin games. Like, it's not like IG were polishing styles in group stage that they could return to in the quarterfinals. Like, it feels like IG didn't really feel like they were going to be challenged until they made the final. And that's kind of the feeling I get here, is that IG is falling back to super classic IG playbook, but that's what TL prepped for. TL prepped for exactly this IG. And things like the lane ward we're seeing and other things there are surefire signs that TL were absolutely ready for this opponent. Here is this further lane gank here. So the minimap here, if we had pro view, so this is the part where I'm going to be very tempted. I really wish we had pro view. You definitely want to toggle the mid lane matchup here, because if you look at the minimap, this looks to be the scariest position for Rookie to be with flash down on Syndra, and the best position for Jensen to be. You can actually think of Sylas as kind of a faux Aurelia in this particular scenario, because whenever we had Aurelia mid, we would always talk about how the ideal positioning for the minion wave, when it's Aurelia, is frozen outside of the mid lane turret, and then just the ability to engage, fairly far down the mid lane on the overextended Syndra and just chase down for a kill. As a melee champion with acquisition CC, you want the minion wave frozen just outside the turret, and then the all-in has such a much higher chance of success, especially knowing the Rookie's flash is down. And he's already been punished for trying to push in the wave further from this scenario and lost his flash last time out. So that's why Jarvan's ready for the gank, because Sylas, just like Aurelia, can E in and then has, a stun start off for a potential kill here. And if Jarvan shows up, it's 100% chance of success. Meanwhile, Syndra's able to communicate with her now freshly shopped jungler. I need backup. I need a lane gank now. Otherwise, I'm going to die pushing this wave. So there's a lot of mind games going on that we can't show without pro view. But that's why this play happens. Jensen says, this is my time to all in. The moment he misses his stun, it's actually really, really scary for TL to push any further. So it's smart of them to pull out when they do. Jensen doesn't have that much burst from the Syndra ult because he can't put down spheres. He only gets the base damage of no spheres on the Rift R. And IG are ahead of this play. And it's the first time IG have been ahead of the play at 7 minutes. And you think, all right, in group stage, how many times did IG have a super slow start but then win the game? There were a couple. But in general, they would make something happen in the early game, and the enemy would make something happen, and then IG would just win in the late game. I think a lot of IG's mistakes were actually more towards kind of the 14 to 20 minute mark, and then they would just have a clutch play around 22 to 28 and end the game. It's not been many games where the enemy jungler has been way ahead of Ning in terms of like where he's been on the map and what he's been able to make happen, even blow further summoners than the enemy. And it's kind of sliding scales because only 7 minutes and there haven't been any kills. But again, it's a good look for TL in this series where it's kind of like, it reminds you more of the Ivern game for IG than any of their other previous games. Core JJ on a pretty regular back timing here, so nothing too exciting to talk about there. Let's watch how this is set up with Ning. So Ning comes to contest the red buff, I believe. Yeah, his ward would have been spotted. And then they just go for a double gank in mid lane. That's why Core JJ is here to roam. There's a lot of... I mean, Jensen has no wards, and there's no real reason for him to push up. The lane reset here is not as important, because the minion wave is still grouping. And the chances of him being dived here are so high. But you just look at how long this camp is. Like, this is just how IG plays. Like, yes, he dies, but if you look at how long they set up for this, like, the brush camp is so insane. 7:03 is when Ning has started in this brush, and you don't know where Alistar is, you don't know where Ryze is till now. Now you know where Ryze is, you still don't know where Alistar is, but Core JJ comes in for the first kind of subvert. Like, if you just feel for how long this is. Alistar leaves the brush. Not spotted by the control ward. Unlucky. Like, it started at 7:03. It was a 38-second brush camp from Ning to flash, like W flash R. So yes, Jensen dies here, but the amount of time invested to make this play happen is super, super high. And they actually lose quite a lot to make it happen in the bot side, losing flash on the Kai'Sa. They also lose the trade top side because Impact can play and use all of his damage aggressively, not expecting anyone to come. A 38-second brush camp to make that happen that involved 2 people, jungler and bot laner, and summoners on Ning. Like, you get the kills. Like, obviously that's good in a vacuum, but it's a lot to invest to get that kill. What was xSmithy doing in this time? We should find out. From 7:03. He got his red buff, as we saw. Got his Krug camp. Backed. What did he get on his back? Okay, he gets the Balmy Cinder. He's going for a blue buff reset. And he's saying, just don't die mid lane. So it's not really about xSmithy, like how much he gets in other lanes. It's more about the next portion of this game is the fact that blue buff gives a lot of lane control to Jensen. He can start to take over the lane. Jensen wasn't in a shopping position. And Infernal is spawning. So it's definitely a don't die call. And given that it took 38 seconds and everything to make it happen, in an ideal world, Jensen doesn't die there. But I don't look at that and say, lol, Jensen. I understand if someone else does, but the amount of investment, like no LCS jungler makes that play. Ning is like the most likely to make a play like that. And yet it also required the bot laner's time and the bot laner's flash to make it happen. And xSmithy gets the Infernal. And that's what he was wanting to do. He was wanting to reset, pass the blue, and then set up for an Infernal play around the bot side. They still get the Infernal, but this is where you get worried. Like, this is right after I had done my impact segment, and then you see this. You're like, all right, Team Liquid, you're getting the Infernal, feeling good, and then impact gets solo killed, and you're like, ooh, analyst cursed was looking real here. Like, remember, this is not Comet Rise, this is Phase Rush Rise, getting a solo kill on Gnar, and he had a CS lead going, and that's when I was like, oh boy. Someone's memeing in chat, Impact just don't die, I'm doing Infernal. I mean, that's actually correct, right? Like, literally, Ning just went top, and Impact had to flash to get away, and his jungler's bot side taking the Infernal. So, you definitely shouldn't die here. I got Gnar in the mind, guys, sorry about that. But, like, Nico should definitely not die when Nico's flash was just blown by Ning. Ning goes back topside, and they still get the solo kill here. After all, it's just Impact misplaying the lane. We're going to get the replay to see it. It was a flash play, I believe. We can watch the replay. But it's just knowledge of the matchup. It's kind of the problem here. Like, what's the damage range? Let's find out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Impact for sure doesn't think the Shy has kill pressure in one rotation here. Flash W, yeah. I mean, it's really well played by the Shy, but this is like the panic stations kind of outcome for TL. After you've had Impact be so reliable this tournament, for him to be solo killed in this matchup, a matchup where he picked he picked Nico into Rise to win the matchup, ostensibly. It was the last pick, right? It was the final overall counter pick. They didn't counter pick for bot lane. They counterpicked for top lane, and he got solo killed. That's usually where all the good early game work from TL might have just come unstuck. Like, this game has gone better than expected for them. We don't see a 30 CS lead in mid lane. But it kind of starts to subvert the good play. Because we looked at the draft and we said, actually, this is a pretty bold draft to take against TL, against IG. You have 2 losing lanes, and your top lane counterpick is a skill matchup. They lost the skill matchup. Mid went better than expected because xSmithy's gank was really strong. Bot lane, when the camp happened, mid lane got a flash, but otherwise it's CS for CS, which is kind of nothing doing. And the Alistair being in lane will always stop Sivir from walking up. The moment the solo kill happens, the immediate future of 3 losing lanes and IG rolling over TL, like, that spidey sense is tingling. Your paranoia as a TL fan should be tingling at this stage. So keeping map control and keeping in this game from this point onwards is actually something that becomes harder and harder when, even after a Negatron cloak shot, like, Impact is losing trades really hard. People are wondering why I'm conflating Nico and Gnar so much. It's because in my head, on-hit Nico is basically Gnar. So I just think about that when I'm thinking about, like, lane analysis about it. I apologize for getting it wrong as many times as I will. I will try to focus on it. All right. So let's watch how TL keeps on their win condition. They've discussed how their win condition here was to make sure that mid jungle stayed ahead and they were able to transfer that lead bot lane. Now, transferring leads bot lane is exactly what Team Liquid does. Every single plan of theirs will always inevitably go towards play through bot side. Like, that's just how they will always be as a team with Doublelift and Core JJ on the roster. It's the same thing about Ruler and Core JJ. It's why Doublelift and Core JJ is such a match made in heaven. It's not just world champion. It's not just Core JJ's English proficiency. It's that Gen G's only win condition was to get Ruler ahead when Crown fell from grace. And TL's kind of primary win condition will always be the same as well. So for now, mid jungle is again more competitive than we assumed when we saw the Syndra. But let's see how TL can kind of reset the problem they have of Impact not even being able to walk up topside. Another lane ward. Fresh lane ward at 11:31. The lane wards here are so cool. Like, this is definitely the power of analysts. Because I would not have been able to tell you before this series started, in just normal vision, like, lane ward brushes. That's the way that you're going to be able to subvert Ning's early game. But these brush lane wards are really awesome. They're really doing a lot here because Ning has got, you consider his options. TL have invested everything in mid. Like, Smithy has been mid so many times. Ning's not going to go mid lane because they're not going to be able to get first roam and clear those wards and then make a least in play happen again. Bot side, he's already been spotted, and they haven't had the level of control they expected here, and Sivir is already at Essence Reaver, so he's going to be able to push in. Top side lane gank is the most likely place Elysian is going to go. So, preventative lane ward, Ning walks in, and until a minion aggroes him, he can't know for sure that the lane ward is there. And what does a lane ward do, you might ask? A lane ward does exactly what you saw. Let's talk about this play. Let's talk about this play where Lee Sin pings on to the secondary brush and says he wants to go in there and get the gank onto Impact with no flash if the lane ward is not there versus when it is there, and how much it gives them. Because Jensen, if you notice, is bot side. Core JJ is bot side when this play all starts to happen. They're not actually looking to come top side until now. EQ is just being used by Jarvan. It's not like Jarvan was coming to gank top. Jarvan was EQing into his Raptor camp, his Krug camp to kill Krugs. Braum is recalling. Jensen and Rookie are brawling in mid lane. And then, the moment that this happens, the minion wave doesn't give away that Ning is there, and that's where TL absolutely click their fingers into action and the roams start. So watch the mini-map here, because we saw the play happen in front of us. Jarvan kills the Raptors and comes top. Jensen comes top and teleports early. This is a very early teleport coming through from Jensen, and Core JJ packs up from base and starts coming topside. So if you look at the time lag between people responding, Jensen pushes out a wave, already knew that top lane was definitely going to be a firing spot, full channeled his teleport and got involved. And you look at the minimap, Syndra, who is a very poor roaming champion compared to the roaming assassins like Akali, is only now going to walk around the banana brush to start walking up. So they're nowhere near this. And then able to steal away the Realm Warp. So that's really nicely done by Jensen. It gives them no escape. They get 2 kills for 0 to start off around topside where they had a no-flash Nico who was far behind. That already is a huge turnaround in this game. And then from there, Core JJ is going to roam first. Bot lane is just staying bot, right? Because they have no idea this play is coming. And TL... this was the big moment in this game. This was the big-brained, big moment because their prep to lane ward for Ning and their communication around what the secondary brush camp from Ning was going to represent turned around an early game where they had had almost no impact whatsoever. It's a triple kill for the Sylas in this one play that goes from Sylas farming out pretty decently against a Syndra after getting ganked to Sylas suddenly having 3 kills and the game being entirely... The script of the game is entirely rewritten here. And people can look at this and say IG misplayed it. But IG played it how IG always do. We're going to look for ganks. Ning always focuses on those. Get the Shy ahead. That's where he likes to go. Ning plays a lot of time. He sets up a camp topside. There's no flash on the Nico. That's the person we should focus on. And lane gank was that. It was the right lane. We already discussed how top lane was the only realistic one. And IG's tendency is to be, again, fight-focused rather than farm-focused. Like, Lee Sin doesn't care that he's 10 CS behind the Jarvan at this point. IG does what IG always does. So I don't think IG plays this poorly. I think Team Liquid plays this great. Like, this is the real awesome play from Team Liquid to be so well researched on the team to communicate around Impact's lane ward. And the lane ward is the MVP of this entire fight. Like, the Realm Warp steal was an inspired one. But I'm not saying that it's like individual outplays from TL. This is not anything about individuals apart from an individual outplay on putting a ward in a secondary brush. It's very much just a super smart team play that was well researched. And then from there, you know, they start up the Rift Herald, which is another objective around the scene of the topside advantage. Ning's just respawned. And then just kind of thinks that he can walk up 2v3 and be fine. This is where things get scattered. This is where actually you should criticize IG is... Like, IG keep fighting. Like, IG will always fight. If you watch their LPL games where they lose to bottom teams, it's because they keep fighting when they shouldn't. Like, IG in no way should be committing to this fight. Biggest example here is lane assignments. When this play starts, the lane assignment call from Jackie Love is, I'm going to get these last 2 turret plates and get really, really strong, and I'm going to have 2 items ready to go on fights. And that's why Impact is rushing down bot lane, because he's got the teleport and he's going to be able to answer. This is not a teleport AD carry game. It's heal versus heal for Jackie Love versus Doublelift. Ning and the Shy can for sure walk up here. That's fine. This part here, okay. And it should be, let's just, you know, pressure them a bit. We can always walk away. Ning's got his flash. We don't have to fully commit here. It's fine to pressure a little bit around this area, but then you back away. Syndra is in base, can't be there. Kai'Sa is in bot lane, and clearly being told by the team and get the turret plates. Otherwise, he would have roamed, what, 20 seconds earlier? And Alistair's Alistair, right? Just walking around mid lane. You're already outnumbered here, and your numbers will get there slower because Impact has TP advantage and Sivir can ult there. Instead, like, this is the most Rambo Q. I assume to look for a smite steal on the Rift Herald. And then, you know, you're going to be... The TP instantly stops the Shy and Baolan from walking up. And this ends up being bonus kills here. Rookie comes up and walks out. This is the epitome of the... I always use the... Does anyone, like... Do people know... Does anyone play with dominoes in the chat? And I don't mean ordering cheap pizzas off the internet. Like, is it okay to talk about the idea, the concept of dominoes in 2019? Like, is that a normal thing? I actually need to know. Like, do young kids know what dominoes are? Like, dominoes were not like the cool thing to play about back in my day, but like, you know, I don't see much dominoes in real life these days. But it's all the concept of like you push the first one, and then as you know, it can have cool patterns and stuff. But the dominoes here are Ning thinks, okay, maybe I can smite this. You know, it fell to 39 health. That part makes sense. The Shy had already had the idea of, okay, I don't want to be involved in this domino chain. I'm just leaving. And then Baolan, as we mentioned, is walking up. Kai'Sa's never coming. And the dominoes here are, well, Baolan is overextended because Ning said, maybe I can smite steal the Rift Herald. And then Rookie, who's trying to assist the person who got in trouble because of Ning trying to steal the Rift Herald, the Alistair, then dies as well. And then the Rift Herald charge takes down the mid lane turret. I think they don't get first turret here, so at least they don't lose first turret. But think about the game state change paused here. Right now, remember this, 13 minutes 41, 23.5k gold to 22.3. So a 1,300 gold lead and 6 kills. That is what they have at 13 minutes 41 to Team Liquid. Let's go back in time to Papa's favorite, the lane ward. Go back further. The lane ward play starts happening less than 2 minutes earlier. At this point, IG is 1,200 gold ahead and TL have no kills. The game state change from this lane ward and TL's macro collapse is a swing of negative 1,200 gold to positive 1,300. So 2,500 gold swing pre-14 minutes, before turret plates are even down, which is a huge amount of gold. For context, there's 35k gold in the game. So we're talking about 8% of the entire game's gold is changed over the course of 2 minutes. And at this point, you're sitting there as an analyst saying, why did TL draft these losing lanes? Impact got solo killed. Like, IG's going to run over them. And then 2 minutes later, TL actually have a 1,200 gold lead. 4 kills on their Silas, who had no kills before, and huge map control advantage, because while they didn't get first turret, they got mid lane turret in trade for the bot lane turret, and all IG can say is that Jackie Love is closer to second item. Like, that is such a huge momentum shift. They're going to lose the Cloud Drake as well. It was that play, like I was sitting there, I was watching on the analyst desk with, who was there? Deficio, Froscurin, and Dash. And that was the play where, like, Dash was like, wait, like, that was really smart. And that was the play where the 3 of us were there being like, holy crap, like, Team Liquid could win this game. Like, they were on a just complete different level to IG in terms of decision-making processes this game. And IG's back doing IG's thing. They're sticking with what they do. Looking for more ganks. Core JJ, a monster on this play, by the way. Like, Core JJ dies here, but look at how much he subverts. He's there for the lane gank in preparation for Ning being there. I'm just watching the shield, like, tank so much damage, and then he dies to the feels bad Q pop. Ugh, you hate to see it. Nice stuff from IG. This time they're able to outnumber Impact's bot side. Similar to the scenario that happened just before, and it makes the game even, which is something cool to see. Let's watch how this play happens here. And this is just IG being decisive, right? They actually start rushing up super early, and the defensive pings are already there. Impact's already told them, I can't be there. But you just end up getting baited. Like, they could have stopped this play a lot earlier. This is the big 2-man stun, right? Ugh. I don't have my keyboard shortcuts the same way, so I need to watch this one in 0.5 times speed. Let's do it. Let's watch this play from the Syndra, because we know that Rookie is, like, the best Syndra to ever live. So, oh, Jesus. Like, holy moly, the stun, man. So that's the, so he QW'd, puts it down, Qs for a second. How do you even do this? So this is to stun ostensibly double lift Oryx Smithy, right? And this, so the reason you do this stun is that it stops you from juking left or right. Most people would just stun straight on, i.e. score a goal between the Sivir and the Jarvan. He stuns both. This is like some, what's it called in bowling? Like 7-10 split or whatever? Like, this is fucking insane. Like, how good do you have to be at this video game? It may have been an accident, someone says. Come on, man. Like, Rookie plays so much Syndra. He's so good at Syndra. Like, I have seen him win every bad matchup from Syndra from pure outplay. He is the one player in the world on Syndra where I say, I don't even think about being an accident. This is for sure on purpose. I'm going to watch it one more time. Like, one more time. Oh, boy. Rookie. What a god. What a fucking god. Awesome play. Awesome, awesome play. Actually insane. It won't be on the YouTube highlight for like the best League of Legends players of all time, but like, holy moly. And he needed that. Otherwise, they actually wouldn't have punished. Like, it would have been probably a 2 for 2. Maybe even a 2 for 1, even though they sent 5 members. But Rookie's double stun actually gets them the bonus kills to fully make it worth Impact getting solo time in bot lane. And it kind of plays into what this series, like what this game ended up being. Like, we thought it would just be TL getting styled on by IG because they have better players. And IG definitely has better players than TL, you know, across the 5 in terms of talent, which is always a bit kind of inverted commas. But what we actually proved to be is that TL's kind of first preparation for IG and then their ability to play around map vision and expected timings was way above what we would have just assumed based on TL's kind of group stage games. And it kind of became a macro versus micro game. Or series, I should say. Much more than you might have expected. And it's not to say that TL played bad in a micro sense, but I think that TL was so smart about knowing their enemy and subverting what IG is good at, they just really sent a series that seemed so predictable as a 3-0 for IG into like utter chaos. Do IG have better players than G2? I'm going to say yes, but I feel like it's never meant less to say something like that. I think if you compare IG and G2 and you say, Papa, who has better players? Like ability to click buttons and like in like some sort of training mode, like can you dodge every skill shot and hit every skill shot? Would IG be better than G2? I would say yes. But to me, that's never been less relevant. What I would say to G2's side is that G2 has way, way better teamwork and like kind of team construction, i.e. the 5 players are really close in terms of like just personality fit and understanding about how the game should be played and construction and listening to calls and things like that. And I think that super outweighs IG that I think always seem to have 3 players on the same side and 2 players kind of a little bit off. So to me, that's way more important. But if you want to just be needlessly reductive and say like clicking their buttons, who's better, I would say IG, but probably not even by a lot. Because IG's fallback mechanic, whenever the game doesn't go the way they think it should, is let's style on them. I'm Rookie, The Shy, Ning, Jackie Love, and Balan. They have no other plan B. It's just we'll be better than them at clicking our buttons. But I think G2 has many, many other game plans, as we'll see in the semifinal. So splitting the map here, This is another good thing to see. If you've been a long-time watcher of my stream, whenever we've watched TL matches, we've talked about how when Impact's on a split pusher, they've been either unable or refused to set up vision for him. It's not perfect red side vision, but it is vision that allows Impact to push up and take some more aggressive minion waves. In the bottom side, again, one of the reasons that we thought that TL wouldn't be able to stand up to IG was that TL can't play split pushers. And just little things like this, like yes, Impact's getting solo killed in side lanes, but they're showing more play around split pushers and smarter reflective play around it than they have in previous series. Like this is that's another solo kill where you're like, uh-oh. So in the 1v1 we watched, let's watch the mid lane play here. So they don't actually have flank tell. That's why IG feels strong enough to walk up. I'm going to watch why Balan dies. I didn't see this. I guess, so Balan doesn't have flash and walks up into melee range of the turret. This is a mistake from Balan. Because you're winning the bot 1v1 really hard. Balan doesn't have flash. And I assume he's greeting for a demolish proc. Now, they don't know where Braum is. They may not have respected TP from Sylas, but Sylas has a very strong TP flank. It's way better than Nico's, for example. And knowing that Sylas can TP here to at least one side. Like, if Alistair's on the top side here, it's actually... If Alistair's top side next to Jackie Love, it's actually not that bad to walk up to the turret. But because he's bottom side, the only side they don't have vision around... It's actually just straight up a misplay because you don't have flash to get away and they can just engage on you. So this is actually really poorly played by Balan and walking up. Because you're winning this bot 1v1, like Alistair should never die here. But Alistair just walks up, they engage on Alistair because they communicate his flash is down. They get an extra summoner out of rookie. I think with the control wards they had, IG were fine to walk up to the turret while they were winning a 1v1 bot side. But they played into the only way that it could go somewhat even. It's just unfortunately, again, a kind of a solo mistake. I thought Balan had a really poor series in this one. And then IG do what actually got them into a lot of games, right? Is going for a 50-50 Baron super early. The Rise TP comes in. I wonder if this was communicated at all by TL. The TP, actually. Because the call to Baron at 20 minutes is a very clear one. They clear the ward, and you can see TL just have no way to respond. Impact doesn't even have a TP ward, top side. This is a smart Baron call. Probably the best call of the game from IG. This is super good Baron. And this is one of those Barons that I think a lot of people in chat are like, how could you not respect the IG Baron threat? Like, let's talk about what happened before. Because if you remember, you know, Alistair walked up. That was silly from the Alistair. You're pushing in mid side. All your vision was placed bot side. And TL have been setting up for the Drake for a while, right? So, like, this is your primary objective. TL say, they fell into our plan. And IG also, as you notice, are recalling. Like at this point, Ning is recalling, and they're just giving up the objective that TL outfought them for. But the Shy has TP. I'm not sure who called the Baron here, but the Baron call is a really smart one because TL throw everything bot side with only a single control ward top side, and then IG teleport in and put faith in their Baron speed. Remember, they're doing this with no Mountain Drakes, with a Baron team that... What would I say about the Baron speed? The Baron speed here is like A-. Kaisa is like the best AD carry at shredding Baron. Ryze is pretty good at Baron. Syndra's okay. Lee Sin's pretty good for a jungler. This is not a S+ tier Baron team, but the only person being dead is Alistair. So that means all their Baron damage is straight on it. And they say, let's rush down the Baron here. It's our best way back into the game. And I think after how the first 20 minutes have been played, it's not a desperation Baron, but it's a free Baron. Or it's a Baron where, if we're right on our read, it changes the game that's been kind of tilting to TL's side more and more. People saying Kalista for Baron. Kalista for Secure, yes, but even the Secure is down compared to what it was before. For Baron speed, Kai'Sa's spammability of her passive makes her the fastest Baron taker. I take Kai'Sa every day of the week. I think it's so easy to say that's a terrible Baron coming through from... or Baron defense coming through from TL. But I think TL's just focused on that IG have not really been able to make too much proactive happen, that they just outplayed them in many ways, trading up for the Drake there. So I think it's more of a really good IG Baron take at a time when you'd understand if they were licking their wounds. Literally, Ning was recalling to buy. I think it's much more of a good IG Baron than TL failing on the defense. Like, they had a control ward there. The enemy didn't have Mountain Drakes. The enemy had just died. Like, I understand why it happened. You can still criticize TL by all means, but I'm just saying that's how I look at it. Like, I don't think that's a shame on you moment for TL. But it's the sort of thing that has won IG games. They've gotten back into so many games by getting a Baron steal or a fast Baron. I think they made a really good call. Their Baron calls have been one of their few saving graces, and then things like Baron steals that obviously you don't want to reward a team for pressing smite button better than the enemy. And now IG have a Ryze in a side lane who's gone the full penetration build. It's not Sork Boots, but we talked about in the pregame how the only time we've seen a on-hit Neeko lose to a Ryze was when Nogari was stacking flat pen and percentage pen against Cuve's Neeko. And we see the same build here. So whenever the Shy hits the side lane, he actually has kill threat on both. He has kill threat on Jensen and kill threat on Impact. But they're grouping with him. Which, you know, you got Baron buff, so you could. You get 2 kills here. Double lifts out of mana. And then Jensen... And honestly, this is where you thought that TL had thrown the game, right? That felt like the end of the game. So many games in group stages ended like this. And if you've just been an MSI watcher, and you would have understood if they just rolled through an end of the game. But they don't have much of a minion wave as it presents. And the health bars aren't that high. So given that it's 25 minutes, they back away. So the game doesn't end here, but so many games have ended like this for IG this tournament. It was a surprise to see IG team fight because they can just go side lane with the Shy. But they actually play this really, really well. Xmithy's health bar, for example. Like, the play here from Xmithy is, I'm a tank Jarvan. I'm going to just zone space for a long time. The problem is that he gives up his entire health bar for no benefit. Jackie plays this about as perfect as you can by a Kai'Sa. He guarantees the kill on Jarvan. He sidesteps the Neeko ultimate. The 2 for 0 is big, and then Jensen just ints in the end. Like, that was a big mistake from Jensen. That's definitely the chains you didn't want to hit. This was just really bad by Jensen. Why are both teams 5-man mid with no objectives on the map, says Base to Yua. Yeah, you know. That is exactly what IG does. Let's see how it all starts from we expect TL to be the defensive team, right? Let's see how it starts from a TL perspective. So I think, did TL see Rookie on a recall? Let's find out. So they know Rookie's on a recall because he just pushed in a minion wave or roaming through River, but they don't have that much vision of River, but they made the informed choice that Rookie's on a recall. They could have stopped when that chain missed. Remember, Sivir is ulted here, though, so they're clearly saying commit, Rookie's not there. It's kind of a nothing engage, right? Double lift ults. Let's watch when double lift ults. Double lift ults now. Doublelift is altered. That means Nico and Braum are moving fast, but neither of those are really going to initiate outside like a flash Nico E. Jensen misses his stun, and by the time they've actually done any damage, it's all done to Baolan and Rookie's regrouped. So it's a really weird engage timing from TL when the chains miss. Because if PapaSmithy's not leading, which he wasn't, it was the... it should be like, you know, PapaSmithy leading, then Jensen hitting a stationary target and Impact hopefully layering. Instead, it's like the worst of all worlds in this case, and then Jensen just instanced the backline, which makes it extra bad. Because now, Doublelift, I want to recall, but he's got no mana. It's Alistar versus Sivir, as we discussed. Like, so many games have ended on plays like this. Could they have done anything different? Let's watch IG's push timing. So PapaSmithy's going to respawn in 4 seconds, but has no wave clear. Can they end the game here? It's something to ask in hindsight. The answer is probably not, because Nico's respawning, and 2 tanks are up that can block damage. So I think it's the right move to pull away. But I just mean that given how so many games for IG have gone this tournament, you know, how many games have they been kind of behind at 22, got a Baron and won the game at 25, right? Like, you could have been forgiven for thinking that was the game-ending throw. This is a really poor fight timing from TL. The first thought of let's fight because Rookie's probably not there is fine. But teams are so stubborn at calling off plays like this when you miss a skill shot. And I think the moment that you miss your stun as Jensen, just use the Sivir to move away. 4K gold lead for IG. So I just get an advantage in a 5v5 that we weren't thinking. You know, like the Baron buff ended up paying off in a big way. But you look at this comp and it is largely about Ryze in the side lane, in my opinion. I think they have a lot of advantages because Ryze right now shapes up and can beat Jensen or Impact super easily in a side lane. The enemies engage, like Jarvan has pretty unstoppable engage. Sivir makes him very reliable to be in position. But to me, the big criticism of how IG played this game is that they had the Shy in a position where he could beat everyone in the side lane, and we never really felt that in the game state. So we'll try to keep our eye on the Shy and the side lanes as the game goes on. TL's comp bunkers really, really well. Even though he's a melee champion, Silas can throw out his Q for wave clear. Sivir needs no introduction with wave clear. Nico has a lot of wave clear. It's not perfect with on-hit build. It's much more of stunning the minion wave as it walks in and then allowing Sivir to line it up for a boomerang blade. But when it comes to a team with like non-accountable wave clear, TL has a lot. Like, they have a delay team, and to some degree Sivir was picked to give this team wave clear. Watching why they invade topside here. So EQ engage onto Ning gets him out of the first fight. You see kind of the struggle. It's where a lot of games can slow down around this area, is that pushing up vision to take the next Baron, you need control wards around where you see the TL controller that's just under their gold total on the top right next to the Cloud Drakes. To get deep vision and to threaten any sort of backline flank, you have to face check. And this is a very squishy meta. We don't have tanks being run. In fact, this game has more tanks than we see in almost any other series, right? Like Braum is a support tank. Alistar has, you know, his ultimate to be super tanky, and it's tank Jarvan. So we've got 3 or 2.5, depending on how you look at it. But getting deep vision as a Lee Sin is really hard. Like, Lee Sin goes in to get something resembling deep vision. Remember, it's just a control ward. It's actually hard to notice, but he puts down a control ward without getting in the brush, gets EQ'd instantly, has to move the control ward to be able to escape, and they don't even get any deep vision down. So it's like pretty deceptive up the top side, but that's how hard it is if Alistair's not leading to get down any vision at all. This is super shallow vision when Baron is the primary objective and TL have strong wave clear, and there's no other pressure point on the map. Like, what you're seeing is a lot of 5v5 fighting, right? We're going to watch this whole fight. Team Liquid get a 1-0. Now, before all that happens, at this game point, right? Before we see the face check, it is a 4,200 gold lead for IG. They have a Rise that no one can match in a side lane. They have an inhibitor down, and they have only inhibitor turret in bot side. So they have a very long lane in bot. There's many different things IG can do right now that TL can't respond to. If you ARAM right now, you play into Team Liquid's wave clear, right? So you don't want to play a one lane. So you want to be able to play a side lane. If you send Rise to a side lane, TL have to surrender one of their 5 members around Baron. And then, if you drag someone down, it's much easier to put down forward vision when you're waiting for minion waves to push into you. If you make the play here where you just say, let's fight them, you don't actually leverage the Rise's power at all in pushing up like this. Like, Rise is not involved when Lee Sin is losing his flash and being forced to face check a brush. The map state, if you look, there are no relevant minion wave pushes. Normally, a minion wave pushing into, say, the bot lane inhibitor from Team Liquid is going to force them to send, say, double lift, or in this case, probably Jensen or Impact, to wave clear, and you lose a picked person, and thus, again, vision around Baron is safer. Instead, IG skip all of the steps they can take, whether it's leveraging the Shy's power or pushing in minion waves with strong dueling, and just try to brute force it and say, well, I just want deep vision. And that means that Ning has to sacrifice a lot at the start, and TL get a 1-0 in a scenario where they should be losing. We're watching the fight here, right? It's TL. It's once again IG walking up. And yes, get a lot of damage onto double lift. But can someone explain this to me? Watch what happens here. Consider the communication between Ning and Baolan, who I actually criticized a lot from this series. Ning almost died, trying to put down a control ward, backed. He's taking wolves. He's killing the wolves, guys. He's not coming. He's not. It's not like he's slow and Alice's like, oh, I thought you were running straight here. He's killing the wolves actively. And then Baolan, who saw Jensen and Smithy topside, flash all-ins. Like double lift, you know, there's a bit of damage chunking out here, and Baolan just flash all-ins. Not literally flash. In this case, he walks in, headbutt pulverizes. But I mean, he just decides we're fighting. Ning is walking all the way up and finally gets there. So if you think about it, they lost Baolan's life. And Ning didn't flash either, but, you know, Ning's full reset IG purely because they had no interest in playing the map. Baolan walks up and dies after Ning walked up and deep warded without priority. While the side lanes, as you can see in top and bot, are not side lanes TL have to react to. If TL's only job is to wave clear mid and stop IG putting down deep wards, their comp is actually better. Like, they have a comp that can face check brush with Braum shield much more reliably than the enemy. Jarvan is safer than Lee Sin because it's not a ward jump that requires any sort of skill. It's EQ out. Sivir has wave clear for days. IG is getting nothing and losing things when they have unassailable advantages like, oh shit, who do we send against the Shy's Rise? He's massive. And it's mostly the lack of communication between two Chinese players. It's not like the Shy and Ning are having a bad synergy scenario. It's Baolan and the Shy. Like, they're both Chinese players. There should be no potential for any communication errors there. So it's really, really lazy play from IG. Yes, they want to, again, rush down a Baron. Again, that makes some sense. very easy for Team Liquid to stop Baron. We can watch the replay. Again, you want deep vision, so you can look for either teleport flank or the realm warp play that Bjergsen made famous years ago to go for a fast Baron. We know your Baron speed is fast, but TL know that as well. And they are 5v4, and yes, their jungler's low, but even if their jungler dies, I think TL is fancying a fight here. I think they understand that they can walk up a lot more than IG give them respect for. And the moment that Ning goes in aggressively and loses Blast Plant, he actually just gets chased down and dies. And the moment the Smite is down, the Baron rush is never going to work. It's very pig-headed by IG to die and then rush Baron here. Like, this is cascading bad plays to the point where this is not just a lull IG. This is like, what is happening with IG's comms this game? It's some really poor comms. The sort of comms that you can't expect. You can say, IG are a brash, aggressive team, and like, wow, they lost to some bad teams, but the cascading dominoes we talk about of like bad decision, bad call, bad call, bad call, like, it's a lot of bad calls in a row. Almost got reverse bull-end twice in a row here. And then when you finally see the Shy actually able to walk up and kill people, like, look at the Shy. He instantly pops Jensen. Like, that's so much damage. He has 14 stack. I didn't even notice he had a Medjais. Like, the Shy is styling on this game, but you only notice him when he's flashing over to kill Jensen when he overextends, right? Like, Jensen's sticking around, stopping IG from rushing Baron again. That's why Smithy walks up here. It's actually tricky when you're outnumbered. And this is something to talk about, right? So let's talk about why this happens. Because people were doing the lull Jensen. Like, what's happening here? IG have shown they want to rush at Baron and kill it instantly, right? They already have made a Realm Warp play that seemed a bit pig-headed about it. Smithy has low health bar, but he needs to know that Baron isn't being started. So his control ward's down for now. He's walking away. Jensen's trying to poke around and show that we're not 5-man recall and you can't just rush the Baron. I'm going to stick around here. And he gets killed. So he's too bold in it, and IG is super decisive in picking him. But the decision from TL is we can't just drop a control ward on Baron and 5-man recall. They're going to rush Baron. And without Smite, IG have shown they could potentially be that crazy. And then TL have to try to wrestle back red side vision to stop IG from just taking over the Baron with another Realm Warp play. And it's not like before where they're just ARAMing with 5 in mid lane, pushing out minion waves, and then being able to defend. Now someone's dead with TP down, and Jensen won't be relevant in a Baron defense for at least a minute because he has to respawn and get to the Baron. And this is the sort of chaos where IG will try to rush down Baron. So you do have to walk up and be tasty as Smithy. Like, his job is, well, I don't have any wards around, but I can't let them rush down Baron. I have to walk up alone. Like, it sucks to do this, right? It sucks to walk up as the Jarvan and be like, I hope they're not doing Baron and I hope I don't die. Like, this is, you're being fanciful. This is the same as when you're in solo queue and you ping the Baron. You're like, I think they're doing it, guys, and everyone else isn't walking up, and you're like, I mean, I could walk up and int on it to prove to you they're doing it. You're not trusting me, but they're definitely doing it. But that's kind of what Smithy has to do here. It's his job as the Jarvan. And that's why it's almost like the exact same pick that the Ryze did a second ago. Like, Smithy almost dies. Like, he has to do this. Like, TL's job here is to protect red side because they've spent the last 5 minutes doing that. And that's why we're back on Baron again. Notice Jensen still hasn't been able to get out of base, so it's a 4v5. What happens here? So Smithy doesn't actually get to smite. It was actually an early smite coming through to 382. It was 583 and then an auto. It was an early smite by Ning, and then of all people, it's actually taken by Jackie Love. So if Smithy was able to smite steal this, actually would have had a real chance there. IG were definitely happy to take a 50-50 Baron. And I think in some games, we reward teams for understanding that we're going to lose if we don't take a 50-50 Baron. That's not this game. Do not in any way leave this game being like, IG got it, it's fine. IG could have done so many things around 1-3-1 to make it so that TL couldn't send all their members to protect around the Baron area. They haven't done that. We've gone over it in exhausting depth again and again. Now, they're just being pig-headed, and they do get the Baron after all, which, you know, ends justify the means maybe. But this is just a sign that IG is saying we're only Baroning. It falls to 382, and if PapaSmithy presses Smite, they lose the Baron and lose the game probably as IG. Like a Baron against a team like IG who want to have Ryze in a side lane can often just close the game out because the side lane push doesn't matter. Amusingly, in this game, it probably wouldn't have mattered because IG just never sending the Shy to a side lane. They have the Baron, though, and you're like, okay, maybe they just win anyway. Again, pause the game, 6,300 gold lead, about 10% of each team's gold. So, like, you know, they're 10% ahead in terms of, I mean, 13%, but regardless, you know what I'm trying to say. And then this is the big turning point, right? Remember we're team fighting with the Shy. When did IG last send someone bot lane? I need to know. This is going to frustrate some people, but I need to know. Remember, the Shy could be bot lane in this place. You know, 4 top, 1 bot. Let's find out when someone last went bot lane. Anyone want to make a prediction for the timestamp for when the last time someone went bot lane? Remember, it could have been the Shy at any moment. Anyone? Let's have some guesses. Come on, chat. When was the last time someone was bot lane? We got 20, 22, 4 minutes. Okay, that's wrong. 27:58. Maybe someone looked. Let's find out. I'm going to have to go further back. We're going to crash the VOD. It's worth it. All right, someone was bought at 26:27. This is probably it, right? Alistair finishes his recall at 27:30. And then no one goes bot. Like, there's how many Baron resets happened from this time? Remember, this is still not the Baron. We're still living in the past. Damn. Still no one has gone bot lane. And now we're grouping top lane and still no one is going bot lane. And you might say, well, we got gold leads, got a big hat, double void stuff. We think we can win a fight. And, like, you're not wrong if you say that. Like, there's nothing wrong with saying it's on hit Nico. Yes, Ryze could be in a side lane, but we believe we should win a fight. And you know what? If you ask me right now who wins a fight, I'd say IG. And IG is saying we want to fight. And that's fine, right? Wrong. Because if you look at these numbers and say, all right, IG probably wins a fight. How much do they win a fight by? I don't know, maybe 10%? Maybe it's 60-40, right? And maybe they're 60-40 to win the team fight here. Now, it is 4-item Sivir. We know they lose the team fight around here. But what am I trying to explain to the stream and to the VOD eventually? Is that you always have to think about the opportunity cost of everything you do. The opportunity cost of me streaming this is that I could be watching the latest episode of Lucifer. I could be going out with my friends and drinking. I could be doing a lot of things. But instead, I'm here doing this stream that I enjoy doing. But, you know, the other uses of my time are relevant. IG, at this time, could be approaching this game very differently. They could be sending someone bot lane to push up. And there's no one on the enemy team that can match. Definitely not this on-hit Nico. So if they do that, something's got to give. Nico's bot lane trying to wave clear and getting probably solo killed by Ryze. And then if I ask you, what are the chances you break the base on this Baron if you had pushed up with Ryze bot side versus if you push on the top side? It's significantly different. You always break the base if you send the Ryze bot side compared to you most of the time win a team fight on the top side. But 40% happens way more than, say, like the 90-10 of if you split pushed with the Ryze. So what you left on the table, which is the Ryze in the bot lane pushing at any point in the last 5 minutes, but most relevantly now, right, with the Baron buff, actually ends up losing you the game. And that's kind of the reason why it's wrong, is that even though IG have better items and more gold and are strong at trying to get in there, there's still a chance you lose the game. And there's a good counterpoint here by Serlitz. They're afraid of getting engaged on in the 4v4 with Silveralt. But remember that 4v4 is going to be something that they've played around. I think situationally playing around it is fine. But when Nico's not there, or in the, say 4 seconds it takes for her to get there, or even in previous points where they were playing, say, like 4 mid lane and 1 bot lane, it's not a perfect answer to the scenario. Yes, it's a question mark. Yes, there's a thought to it. But they've subverted guaranteed edges so much in this game, like when they played around Baron so kind of stubbornly, that it's actually more of a symptom of what they're giving up rather than what they're playing around, in my opinion. They're walking up and they're trying to make something happen because they think they're strong. But it means that TL can play one lane, and that's what Sivir dreams of. I cast the 93 minutes to dream game where Teddy just wave cleared for 1300 CS, because that's what Sivir does. If you play one lane, you play into the wave clear and the fact that TL could win a team fight. If you play multiple lanes, you subvert things like that. Finding the Shy, walking away, actually pushing through mid lane a little bit. Amusingly, bot lane's pushing out for TL, which is like the dream, right? So attempt for an all-in. Let's take stock of what was used here. So they try to make an all-in before Ryze gets there. They get Realm Warp out, which is pretty relevant, but TL use all ults outside of, Silas going to have a refresh and Nico's ult. IG didn't use Kick, did use Alistair and Syndra ult, but TL goes in trying to relieve pressure with their tank Jarvan, trying to buy time. The reason you make engages like this, which is what we see here, the reason you make engages like this is you want to waste the Baron buff. You want to engage, get, say, 2 people, get a reset out of IG and not have the base broken while the Baron buff is still up. So IG walk around. They're going to get the mid lane inhibitor. They had this one down before. But the Baron's now down to final minion wave. And if you want to think about it, it's about kind of 35 seconds, 40 seconds between minion waves that you can actually use to threaten. So if you see the timer below a minute and the minion wave coming in, it's almost always going to be the last minion wave for the Baron. So IG are going to be greedy. They could have reset here. They don't have to walk up, but their health bars are pretty healthy. Lee Sin still has Kick. They feel like they can still make this happen and break the base because, you're feeling like getting at least 1 inhibitor turret should be the minimum. And they've been so stubborn about not playing bot side that they feel like they have to break the base here. Notice the Shy is not pressuring the Nexus turrets at this point. He's walking the long way. And then you have the big play. So we'll slow this one down. Let's move it down to 0.75 seconds speed. The 3-man route onto impact here with the empowered duration wins them the game. Ning, one of the few people with his ult up, dies instantly, as you will see. And Syndra also dies instantly. I didn't actually see, did she have Zonias? I need to look back. Sorry for the revert here. Important to note, I assume that she did not have Zonias. Yeah, no Zonias. Here's the big moment, though. Well, that's actually before. Final minion wave. No Zonias. That is one of the few ways where one on-hit Nico can be utterly devastating. The 3-second route is so strong into the Pop Blossom. And again, we were saying, yeah, probably 60-40 for IG and team fights here with their item lead, 16 stat Magi's Rise, etc. last minion waves, they just want to break the base. Not that high in health. But the thing about 60-40s is the 40s happen a lot. 40% is pretty close to 50, right? And 50's half the time. And it's kind of the thing that we're trying to push towards is, I feel like the reverse scenario where the all-in attempt onto IG when they're playing 4 on the top, 1 in the bot lane, happens way less reliably than this one. Like, this ends up being like the God Hand punish. Like, IG feel like there's no way in hell they lose more than 1 person, even if they greed. But Ning dies with kick up because he gets burst instantly. And then it doesn't matter how strong the Shy is. Like, he can't do anything in this fight. Like, so much of this game has been played on Sivir's terms. Like, how much of this game has been played with Sivir able to wave clear and nothing bad happening around here? And it's another one of those cases where Doublelift walks in, he gets headbutt pulverized, right? Like, it's not like Doublelift does huge work this game, but he's going to be a cleanup because Sivir's damage is always going to be proportional to how big her frontline is. Her frontline's pretty big when the enemy explodes instantly. And you're at kind of a point in the game where gold leads no longer matter for IG if Sivir is able to push 5-6 items. The Medjai's has been stolen. Sold. Wait, did Kai'Sa kill minions in the bot lane? Yeah! We got there. We got there, team. We did it. The answer was 7 minutes between bot lane visits. That's a long time. Kai'Sa finally made it, boys. 7 minutes between bot lane visits. And now, TL get to push out, reset, put down vision. They're no longer scared of face-checking their red side vision, which is where IG were able to make their Baron plays. And guess what? We get to make it all about one lane again. The dream. The one lane video game against the utterly super-fed 20-stack Medjai's Rise. And now every team fight is, can TL get access to Doublelift? If not, they lose. Like, it's so hard to win team fights like this against a Sivir this late in the game. That was really nicely done. Watch this replay. Smithy, right? You know, we come back all the way to pick bans when we said, yes, you got the Jarvan. And we saw the nice gank on Syndra early. But Smithy was the jungler you respected the Jarvan the least from in the tournament. Just because he hadn't been able to put theory into practice outside the single game against G2. Like, he came off a good Jarvan performance. And his mechanics in general have been pretty poor this tournament. So, you get to see the big Jarvan plays. One of the reasons the Jarvan's so big. Comes out of control ward. The Shy's not expecting it. They all in. Get 1 kill instantly with no threat on Doublelift. And again, it doesn't matter how much gold IG have on their side. Again, it's a one-lane game. It's actually really well played on the back end here by Smithy and Impact. If you notice, Ning is trying to cut the minion wave with Rookie. They're not actually looking to gank, right? Because 3v5. They're actually trying to cut the minion wave to stop the backdoor bonus. But Smithy and Impact understand it. Smithy's not needed to help with the siege. The minion wave is being carried in by Jensen. Really well played here. If you actually give up the minion wave, you let it aggro onto the Lee Sin, you don't get this huge push off here. Well played by TL. Players know their role. Nicely done. You get to turn it into Baron very easily as well with 5 members. Only now is Alistair resetting from the base. Seeing pings onto the inhibitor turret. Obviously, all IG can do now. They've given up the control of the game because they never actually played 3 lanes. They've given up the Baron. They've lost their inhibitor advantage. Now they have to find a way to catch TL in transition. Otherwise, Sivir just free auto ricochets a victory. So the TPs and stuff here makes sense. You have to pull off shenanigans. Just a death ball though. Like they're not able, like the player here, what you need to be able to do is create kicks and separate up a death ball comp. Sivir was the core tenant of the press R and run at them team that we kind of had as the meta back in 2015 for so long, because Sivir's unique thing is she has 500 range, which in lane sucks, but in team fights, she presses R, everyone moves as fast as her, and she fights in her tank line. And she has an Aftershock Silas, a brawler. She has the ability for the Nico to reset team fights with both her ultimate and, more importantly, the E, as we saw in this particular game. Braum can fight with her, Jarvan can fight with her. Like, Sivir can so happily opt into Death Ball, which is something like Jhin, for example, could never do. And you just get to rush in there and kill closest target. There's no threat. Everyone can use all their abilities to zone people away from double lift, and then Ricochet does all the rest of the work. So there's nothing IG can do. IG lose their all-in play here. And now TL know. You know, they're knocking on heaven's door, basically. TL just wants to play a very simple game. Take down the Elder. IG is at least smart this time. They know they can't fight for this. But it's like the first time they haven't had control of the map in oh so long in this game. This is no doubt super frustrating for IG. Because now you have to deal with TL just walking out. And you're going to get like an emergency realm warp into the back line or the game ends. Because it's 4-stack Elder Baron. Never should have been double buff Team Liquid with how the game was before. Jensen can still... The Alistar ult, nothing can stop him, and the game just ends. No analysis required here. Reminds me of Chovy Silas. The first convincing Silas player we had was Chovy as mid lane Silas against Alistar. Just because you just steal away Alistar's ult and then you brawl and the enemy can't do anything against you with your damage reduction. This is such a preparation victory for Team Liquid. And it was a really impressive win. Like, for me, this is one of the most impressive North American wins in like the history of League of Legends, because NA had always focused on the wrong things when they had hit international tournaments, whether it was kind of focusing on what got them the leads domestically and not paying attention to the East, which was kind of the story in the early days of the scene, to trying to copy the best Eastern teams and not being able to play their style, which has kind of been the story more in the recent years of League of Legends. This was where kind of the rubber hit the road when it came to targeted preparation against IG. And they actually set all of IG's bad tendencies against them through macro play. It wasn't about the draft, right? The draft, I actually liked IG's draft. I think they got a lot of wins in draft, and TL took some pretty bold risks that IG on a different day, or if they weren't as well scouted, would have been able to punish them for. But instead, they sent IG's demons against them. Like, this felt like IG beating IG in some ways, but it wasn't. Like, that's how IG come away. They're like, oh, if only we played better, we would have won. But actually, it was TL playing off IG's tendencies in a really smart way. Like, I think TL, you know, there were many different ways this game could kind of devolve into TL being outmatched. IG definitely you want to take on a mechanical level over TL as a squad, but it just wasn't about that. It was a really impressive preparation onto Team Liquid, from Team Liquid onto IG, and really heads held high stuff. After reviewing TSM TL, which the VOD is on my YouTube, I talked about how I thought TSM eventually will be able to step up as a 5-man squad, and I thought their ceiling is higher than TL's, but it was smart for, you know, NA fans should want TL to represent them at MSI. And after group stage, didn't seem like a very popular thing to think, right? Because Team Liquid had a pretty meager group stage, especially the first 9 games. But I think a game like this where I think the shot calling between the players, the preparation from the analysts, like this felt like a very mature victory for a North American team. And you can kind of count mature North American victories on like one hand over the course of International League of Legends, like Cloud9 over Afrika, though Cloud9 played well and Afrika played poorly. I definitely include this one up there. Like we're talking a top 3 North American victory for sure. And I think it was really impressive. Like this was a really good win from Team Liquid in game number 1. And from there, before we go to break, you look at where the series kind of went further from here. Like game 2 really reminded me of kind of IG versus KT game 2, where I said KT kind of tilted it away. I feel like that was kind of the same story here for IG. Like TL went super kind of passive draft in this case with the Orianna mid lane, compared to the Rise, but were able to close it down, and the Vayne team fights were kind of a treat to see at the end. Once again, Impact kind of having a good laning phase. And then just, even though like Rookie had like a superhuman game, like this was a super hard carry game from the LeBlanc, a bit like Faker's attempt to hard carry in the SKT VOD we're going to get to after the break. This was definitely an individual skill win where Rookie just willed his team to victory. All right, the series ended, a smart draft. Like this was a good draft here. This is a really North American draft, bringing out the Bjergsen in playoff special of the Lux into Zoe, the Skarner versus Rek'Sai that we've been calling for all tournament. Like this was much more back to like the draft being actually pretty intelligent from TL. It kind of feels like they did everything in this tournament. They had the macro victory in game number 1, where the draft I wasn't a big fan of. I really liked their draft in game number 4, and they took their advantages where they could in game number 2. So yeah, Team Liquid. One of the crowning North American achievements, I think, is this victory here. It's not a finals victory. It only matches what CLG were able to do in Season 6. But this was a victory, to me, with no asterisks. Yes, IG had a poor series by their standards, but they weren't historically bad. It was just IG being IG. But having, understand, we have to mention it, they were poor. But I think it was the North American team doing kind of intelligent things across the series on multiple different levels, and then winning without an asterisk, which, hats off to them. Impressive stuff. Sarah Litz in the chat talking about the Frog'em pick with Lux. I think he was the one who did play it in scrims first, yes, but stage game I'm thinking of was the Bjergsen one. But yeah, IG. What might have been. I watched this series, and some people come away from the final when I tweeted out, okay, G2, congratulations, you're the best team in the world now. And they probably think I'm being like the non-reasonable person who's saying, well, they won, therefore they're the best, right? Lol, it was this other team. I actually, watching this series, even though G2 never got a victory over IG, I can't justify putting IG above G2 in terms of a power ranking. Yes, IG might beat G2, and maybe do it way more than 50-50. Like maybe it's a 60-40 match. But IG in this series was so much less than the sum of their parts. And that's what they've been criticized of, is having good players, but not the best strategy around it. So even if it's just a little bit less than the sum of their parts, like IG's probably still the best team in the world. But Baolan and Ning had so poor synergy this tournament. Ning fell away in terms of performance. I think Baolan overall had a pretty poor performance. I think their macro in-game was pretty poor. A lot of their victories were with the game 50-50 or slightly behind, and then just playing better around one fight or one Baron. So I think when you layer it all on after knowing they lost to Team Liquid, there's a lot of red flags there. If they had just won the tournament, there would have been red flags, but hey, they won, right? But with this loss and just kind of the comprehensive nature upon which they were taken down, I think it's very easy to say that G2 deserve a lot more respect than G2. G2 deserve a lot more respect than IG, even if the matchup of IG versus G2 frustratingly never got to happen in a best of 5. Anyways, I'm going to call it there for game number 1 of our VOD review stream. That's probably going to be the longest one between IG and TL. I'm going to take a short break to eat, play some ads, and recharge. And then we got 2 more VODs to review tonight. We have SKT versus G2 game number 4, and then the first game of the final. So going to take a bit of time to eat some food. We'll come back, we'll chat a little bit, and then we'll get to game number 2 of our review. So thank you very much to everyone for tuning in for game number 1 of the stream. And I'm excited to be back with game number 2 very shortly.